So I'll let everybody settle in. Welcome back for our second day, or second half day. I hope everyone had a nice evening and enjoyed dinner and enjoyed maybe a little bit of Brussels as well. I'd like to just start with a very quick recap of some main points that we were talking about yesterday, sort of to get us back into thinking about this. And then if anyone has anything they'd like to add or any reflections, you are more than welcome to do so before we move into our panel discussion and then our workshop. So I think just to recall, we started talking yesterday about why cross-border governance is so important, the potential it has and the value it has, not only for the economic development of a region, but also for the quality of life and the well-being of the people that live in that region. But also, as Olivier mentioned, that it really is the living laboratory of what Europe is all about. And I think that today is getting to be even more important to remember. So, so cross-border regions are sort of a microcosm of Europe, and that makes them even more fundamental. So within that, areas that we looked at in terms of cross-border governance had to do with how do you plan for these regions? How do you plan and how do you think through the future of the region? And not only develop the plan, but how is it implemented and monitored and evaluated? We also had a wonderful presentation with a lot of great data from our colleagues and the role and the importance of the information in understanding the region in order to better work with it. We talked about service delivery and the challenge that service delivery poses, but also the benefits and the opportunities that are associated with effective and efficient public service delivery in a cross-border region. And I think everyone rather agreed that it is probably the most challenging dimension of cross-border cooperation, and probably the one where framework conditions, so regulations, for example, and the differences in regulations between countries is felt so strongly and requires so much additional work. And that is also where the advocacy and the brokering role of cross-border entities comes in and plays very strongly. We finished up the discussions yesterday with a panel on funding and financing, because without funding and financing, none of this can really move forward. And not only the importance of ensuring sufficient funding and financing at the outset for the cross-border organization, but for its lifespan and for the funding and financing for projects and programs. So how to broaden the base, the financing and the resource base. A couple of other points that I think are important to underline that we talked about is that time is a resource, and it's a really fundamental, important one, and we can't forget that. And the role of politics in cross-border cooperation. Perhaps most importantly in terms of getting the cross-border cooperation started, but then in making it sustainable and how to manage that sort of political dimension where the role of the cross-border region is very much in the advocacy and in the brokering. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the first part of our day today. So what we will do is, first, before I go over the day, I'd like to know if anyone has any reflections from yesterday. Anything that particularly struck you, that you thought was important, that you learned, that you want to share with colleagues, because this is also an exchange event, and I know a lot of you did exchange, so that made me very happy. But I'm going to open this up to see if anyone has anything they would like to share from yesterday and from their conversations. Or from the Commission. Okay, everyone is still sort of waking up, so am I. So I will go over the day. Or the half day. We're going to start with, as I said, a panel discussion that Stefan will lead on advocacy and on brokering and cross-border governance. Then we are going to take about a 15-minute break. While you take your break, we will set up the room, and we will come back and work in groups. I think there are enough of us. It's large enough and small enough to get a good group conversation going, and we're going to be really working on the different aspects of the framework and the analytical tool checklist, because we really, really want your feedback. This is for you, it's for cross-border regions, and so your input is really fundamental to making it work for everyone among EU member states that are in cross-border regions. So that's going to be the second part of our morning together, and then we'll come back into a plenary discussion and wrap up the day. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Stefan and our panelists. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for staying with us. Yes, today the topic of the topic of the first session, or the first and only breakout session or plenary discussion, relates to political support. It is a topic that we have alluded to, that we have referenced to on numerous occasions yesterday. And I think it is the area where, based on the conversations that we've had with the 5 pilot regions over the past year and a half, we have seen most critical reflections, both in terms of the political support that is needed to get cross-border cooperation off the ground, but also how to deal with waxing and waning political support over time, about losing momentum, about getting political leaders again interested in taking additional steps to resolving cross-border issues. So just a couple of words before introducing the 4 speakers, because we have 4 for this panel, and then to give ample way for them to share their experiences and their opinions on this topic. So, off the bat, we know that political support is essential for making cross-border governance work. On the slide, you see a couple of reasons why that is so. We know that political agreement is necessary to reach agreements on, for example, the establishment of a cross-border governance body, or considerations why it is not necessary to establish a cross-border cooperation body, but address cross-border challenges in another way, for example, by providing cross-border services in a networked way, as Sabine Zilmer referred to yesterday. It is also essential to task or to provide for example, EGTCs with their mission, with their tasks, and with the necessary resources, both human, financial, and material, that are needed for the day-to-day operation of such bodies, and for the implementation, the development and implementation of specific initiatives. But it is also really important, and in a way, sort of the second point relates to that initial burst of support, political support, that is fundamental for getting cross-border cooperation off the ground. But I would really like to specify the third issue, that is the political support that is needed to help address and overcome challenges along the way. We have seen and we've heard in many of yesterday's presentations how essential it is that political level, at the political representatives at the local, at the regional, at the national level, but also international, are engaged, are aware of cross-border challenges, and understand when critical action is needed, for example, to address regulatory challenges. There, however, a wide range of obstacles to mobilizing and maintaining political support. Presented on the slide are just a couple that we came across frequently. So one is a lack of interest or awareness by local and regional politicians, for example, regarding the need to collaborate. Why look across the border? Because we have already so many challenges to deal with in our own municipality. What value added does this give? An additional point related to that is what I just referred to is the waxing and waning, the gradual, perhaps dilution of political interest. We see in several of the regions that we've worked with where there was an initial burst of enthusiasm 15 years ago, 10 years ago, to get cross-border cooperation off the ground, to create an EGTC, and as new generations of politicians comes in, perhaps that enthusiasm, that sense of urgency is waning. So how to maintain that? Then I turn to the issue of electoral churn, political turnover. Many of your regions face the prospects of electoral turnover. It almost feels like every half year, every couple of months, with local, regional, national elections. So how do you deal with politicians, new politicians coming in, perhaps not being aware of the collaboration that exists, of the results that it has generated, but also of some of the critical challenges that remain to be addressed. So this issue of constant awareness raising, constant outreach to get people up to speed and to get them to pay attention to this. And then finally, and it's not the final challenge, but just the final one that we included on the slide, is the lack of awareness by national actors. I'm not referring here to a lack of interest, but awareness of. Often, cross-border regions, as mentioned yesterday, may be located in the periphery of a country. The distance to the political centers, both in terms of perhaps mental and physical distance is large. So how to raise attention for issues, for challenges that are critical to cross-border communities, but that may not be on top of the political radar at the national level? How do you collaborate as EGTCs or as Eurocities collectively to raise attention to challenges in terms of cross-border governance? Or how do you raise attention and put it on the political agenda issues related, for example, to congestion, to pollution, or to the funding and financing or the regulatory framework for EGTC staff, as was mentioned yesterday by the director of the Cerdagne Hospital. So let's get back to our little colorful framework. Just like to highlight a couple of elements. Basically, political support is essential to most, if not all, of these elements. Either upstream, sort of, it is necessary to take action, or downstream, it can generate political support. So upstream, I'm thinking, for example, in terms of the need to get political involvement and agreement on agreeing on the purpose or the need for or the opportunities provided by enhanced cross-border collaboration. Also, obviously, the need to get political agreement and support for the establishment of cross-border bodies and cross-border governance structures within those bodies, and the decision-making in terms of who gets a vote, what are the shares, who pays for it, etc. But also in terms of developing strategic documents and agreeing on the short and midterm priorities. What do we want to achieve? Taking into consideration that those politicians who may agree with the strategy may not be there to see its fulfillment. So how do we ensure that there is continued political commitment? Then not highlighted now, but it's on the bottom, the issue of service delivery. Yesterday we talked quite a lot about citizen support for service delivery. Obviously, it is necessary to have political support often to be able to provide a service, but it can also sort of generate additional political support. If citizens see benefit from a service that improves their lives, it can create that sort of extra attention to the continued service delivery, the improvement of the service delivery, and it can raise awareness, it can generate sort of additional support for politicians to take this into account. And obviously there's the issue of funding and financing. So the need to get political support, not only for funding and financing of the cross-border body, to make sure it has the necessary mission and funds to carry that out, but also to adjust it when needed if the demands of the founding members change or if the demands by citizens change. Then drilling a bit more down To the tool, I would like to highlight basically 3 areas. You see 4 elements highlighted, but 3 areas really that link back to this. So one, the importance of building awareness of newly elected politicians, of what is in place, what is working, what is not working, why do we need to pay attention to cross-border collaboration and what is needed. In a way, this ongoing process. Secondly, the identification of what specific issues need to be addressed for which there is not enough or not yet enough political awareness or support. Which actors need to be motivated? Where do we need to lobby and advocate? Which are our partners that can help us do that? And what are the different fora for that? Is it the CEG, the Intergovernmental Commission in the Grand Région? Is it at the national parliament? And then finally, the engagement with the public, in the sense that by engaging with the public, by having political support or by having public support for cross-border service delivery, or by really being able to articulate to politicians a citizen need, so these are cross-border challenges that need to be addressed, that can in turn generate political support. These are all topics that we would like to address with our panelists. And I would like to very much welcome on the stage Maria Zambre from Pôle Métropolitain Frontalier. Thank you for joining us. From the Eurométropole Lille-Kortrijk-Tournai, we have Catherine Christians and Léa Duhem, and Jean Perroni from Mot. Thank you for being with us. And I would already like to invite Marie, if you could share us your experience.
Non? Alors, je vais faire ma présentation en français.
I will speak French, as some speakers did yesterday. I hope you won't blame me on this. I would like to show you our cross-border territory, like Nathan did very well yesterday. I would like to remind you that we are at the border between France and Luxembourg, and we are quite specific because we have 3 bodies which are active in the cross-border cooperation. We have an EGTC, we have the so-called PMF, Pôle Métropolitain Frontalier, on the French side, and then ProSud with the Luxembourg municipalities. So we have these 3 structures which are intertwined, and we all work on French-Luxembourg cross-border cooperation. We all have the same goal when it comes to promoting and advocating cross-border development. We want to remove obstacles at the border, but because these bodies have separate management committees, we don't work in the same way. The Alzette Belleval was created in, the EGTC was created in Luxembourg. We have contacts with various stakeholders on cooperation. We have direct contact with the administration. ProSud is an association of Luxembourg municipalities which has signed an agreement with the state. ProSud is very well known in Luxembourg, but not so much in France. PMS is also an association of French municipalities. Its actions are well known in France, but not so much in Luxembourg. Thanks to the actions we've taken, we enjoy a lot of recognition far beyond our members, so beyond PMF and ProSud. We have regular exchanges of views so as to promote the role of our bodies. Some of our members are in both bodies, which means that we have a true networking across the border. So I have told you about these three bodies and how they can gain a political support for cross-border cooperation in their daily work. And now I will look at the regional dimension. We also have other bodies working on CBC, cross-border cooperation. This gives another impetus to our actions by placing them in a larger framework, since Luxembourg has borders with 3 different countries. We work together with the greater region, the Grande Région. The Great Region is a political body, a common political body. It is represented by an EGTC, but it is also the managing authority of the Interreg A Great Region Fund. Since the cooperation was launched, the Alzette Belleval EGTC was identified as a functional zone. It's a local and structured space which funds Interreg programs with a specific amount which it allocates in an autonomous way, and it works on pre-identified issues. The EGTC Alzette Belleval selects projects and programs. And in order to show you how these bodies are involved in cooperation, ProSud funded one of these projects, which was selected by the EGTC Alzette Belleval. So we've always worked hand in hand, and this gives us a lot of power towards national political bodies. We have another important body called the French-Luxembourg Intergovernmental Conference, called CIG. It was set up in 2020 to promote bilateral dialogue between France and Luxembourg. It meets approximately every 2 years. It aims to sign bilateral agreements to facilitate exchanges and projects between France and Luxembourg, and to facilitate the life of inhabitants. Different working groups have been set up on the following topics: health, mobility, education, academic cooperation, research, vocational training, culture, security or safety, spatial planning, waste management. So it is a vast array of topics. The PMF is a member of the French delegation to the CIG and has been a member since 2021, so as to advocate for border regions, because this is where the issues are felt most strongly. And this is important for our region, because we moved from a classical interstate relation to a conference which clearly addresses cross-border issues. PMF has a cross-border plan for 2035. We work in child nurseries, in the field of health, on waste management as well. The CIG is the place where you can make specific proposals in cross-border management with agreements signed between states. The CIG is essential for cross-border cooperation because those in ProSud want to be part of the delegation in the CIG. And this is not the case at the moment. This is what we've done at the PMF. There are other bodies which take part in these actions, such as the MOT. We also have cities associations like Quatropole or Tonicité. We have also other bodies which make proposals in cross-border cooperation. we also work hand in hand with the French and the Luxembourg states. We've seen that the states are more interested in cross-border cooperation. In the past, they did not want to look beyond the border, but after a pandemic, they realized how much we depended on the neighboring region, and this dependence has been will be reinforced in the years to come if we look at growth prospects for Luxembourg. We estimate that there will be twice as many workers or cross-border workers in 2050. It is estimated that the Luxembourg population would reach 1 million inhabitants in 2050 instead of 650,000 now. And if we don't work on cross-border cooperation, Luxembourg will not have the possibility to grow. So cross-border cooperation with Luxembourg has advantages because Luxembourg is a small country with only two levels, the state and the municipalities, which makes it much easier. Once our work is considered relevant, it is easy to raise awareness with Luxembourg politicians. And very often, when it is decided to launch a project, a dedicated team is set up in the ministry to support the implementation of the project. In France as well, there is more and more interest for cross-border cooperation. It was considered for a long time as something marginal, to the contrary to the cooperation with Switzerland. But because Luxembourg was interested, Paris decided that it was interesting as well. Of course, the Luxembourg border is quite far from the capital, and it was quite difficult to raise awareness on the issues. But now it's the prefect of the Moselle region who is now in charge of cross-border cooperation, and this has changed a lot. The préfet is far more accessible. He knows the region, he knows what cross-border cooperation is and what the issues are. Beyond these traditional means to raise interest with politicians in the capitals, I would like to address a method that we developed, a working method, which has helped us make a lot of progress on cross-border cooperation. Let me mention, first of all, that on the French-Luxembourg border, there are two specific issues. First of all, cross-border work, which is very important in our region. On the French territory, we have 127,000 cross-border workers, and most of them live in the PMF region. And this population is expected to grow, with 70% of them on our territory. In certain municipalities, 90% of workers work in Luxembourg, and they enjoy better living standards than those who work in France, because in Luxembourg you earn twice or three times as much as you would in France. So that means that Luxembourg attracts a lot of workers, and these cross-border workers enjoy better living standards, and this generates mobility issues, housing issues, or public service challenges. And the other specificity is the absence of a return of taxation on this cross-border work. income tax is collected where people work, but it should be transferred and spent where people live, because this is where public authorities need the money to improve infrastructure. But here, Luxembourg does not transfer the money to the French state. And these French municipalities need that money to fund the infrastructure which these residents need. So we needed to adapt our working method so as to obtain political support and financial support. We developed an original view of projects with a 360-degree vision. We don't stop at the border. When we perform a diagnostic, we look at figures on both sides of the border. Let me bring up one concrete example, health. We are told that all nurses go and work in Luxembourg, that we don't have enough nurses in French hospitals. And now it's also the same for doctors. But when we look at health with a 360-degree vision, we realize that it's the same in Luxembourg. They don't have enough nurses, doctors, or medical staff. So this helps us develop different solutions. We don't propose the same solution. Some would say that we should prevent nurses from working abroad, but if we have a cross-border approach, we reflect on what we can do to make our region more attractive for nurses, doctors, and others. The solutions we offer may sometimes be of an experimental nature, but this is all very good because we can implement new original ideas, and these ideas are tailor-made for our region and for a specific region, characteristics. Everyone knows that cross-border cooperation is difficult. You need to convince people everything is more complex and you have to work with more operators. But there is no preset procedure. So we can design the solutions to solve our problems. It's because nobody's done it before that we can do it. That's what I always say. And I will bring it two examples of this working method that we developed.
Donc sur notre territoire.
So the first example is an example regarding mobility. People mainly use their cars to get to work, but there are many traffic jams everywhere, and so cross-border workers often spend 3 to 4 hours commuting between home and work. So we have a mobility plan in Luxembourg which actually stops at the borders, and we would like to now change that into a cross-border mobility plan. Another interesting project has to do with crèches, kindergartens. So in France, they find it hard to find staff, and they don't have enough people working in a nursery for toddlers. And so everyone is talking about difficulties in terms of recruitment, but we didn't know what it was about. Now, a few years ago, we realized that many of our Luxembourg children are actually registered in crèches on the other side of the border. Now, in the French crèche, because the cross-border workers have the right to have a place for their children in Luxembourg, they no longer have a priority in the French crèche. And so what we did was to use the cost of non-action. So if Luxembourg pays what the intermunicipalities have to pay, then it would cost about 5 million a year. But if we let the situation continue as it is, Luxembourg will have to host an additional 1,000 children in its own crèche, and that would cost about 15 million euros. So we would have to build new facilities, recruit staff, and so on and so forth. So we believe that our solution is a logical one because it would allow everyone to benefit from an improved public service and also save money. So this is the way we've decided to work. And one last topic. Over the last few years, progress was made in cross-border work between France and Luxembourg. We don't talk about mobility, we talk about public service. We talk about healthcare, and Luxembourg is ready to fund some projects on the other side of the border. However, this is limited to certain sectors only, and maybe this doesn't respond to the challenges of a Luxembourg metropolis, which goes well beyond its own borders. So that's why we've created a special fund to fund cross-border projects and initiatives. Now, people at the borders are claiming that they need compensation, a bit like Canton de Genève has done with France. However, the Luxembourg government and the various governments have rejected this claim, sometimes abruptly, in fact. And in order to try to find a solution despite everything, because we have to go past this no, some new ideas emerged, and these are original ideas, very creative. The creation of a fund to finance cross-border initiatives and projects. For instance, to feed the fun, we're going to have a special tax on telework. During COVID lockdown, everyone went on telework. And after the lockdown was over, people wanted to continue working home at least once or twice a week. And so there is a special tax, a special fiscal system for telework. And so the idea now is to share the taxes on telework from France and from Luxembourg and use that money to fund cross-border projects and cross-border investments that will be needed, especially in the field of mobility. Now, the new Luxembourg government has announced that it would be working on these specific issues. It has promised to come up with original proposals in the next ICG. So this means that the cross-border dimension is now taken on board much better than in the past. But we need an overall cross-border policy. We need France to work on this too, and it needs a real commitment, and that's what's lacking right now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Marie, very much for that really rich presentation. What I take from this before handing the floor to the colleagues from Eurométropole is, I think, the complementarity of the actors in the coalition of PMF, ProSud, and EGTC, Alzette Belval, the access that they have to different actors, their unique characteristics that enable you to talk to different levels and to lobby and advocate for solutions, and showing the cost of non-action clearly to political decision makers to get momentum for innovative changes. With that, I would like to invite Catherine and Lea to present your experience.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Alors,
Good morning, everyone. The Euro Metropole was presented to you yesterday. Just a quick reminder. So our metropole, Kortrijk-Lille-Tournai, is on the French-Belgian border, but we also have the language border in Belgium. So regarding attractiveness, we have a specific angle. We focused on communication to make our Euro metropolis more attractive. There are two targets. First, elected people and the partners, and then the second target are the citizens of the Euro metropole. Now, of course, we have different objectives depending on the targets because the purpose, the goals are not the same, and we're going to explain that in a minute. So let me introduce the first tools of communication which are valid for both targets that I have just mentioned. And then we will focus on communication towards the elected people, and then we'll move on to communication towards citizens. So we start with a global communication for both target groups. This allows us to provide information to both target groups. We're talking about general information about what Eurometropole is about, what we're doing. So we all know that it's not that easy to explain what an EGTC is to people because it's a special legal form, so it's difficult to explain that. We want to avoid repetition. We want to be clear, user-friendly, and so we have chosen a few examples. Ever since 2016, we publish a newsletter called Flash Info, and we give information of the Euro Metropolis, and we talk about our partners, and there are cross-references to our website. This is sent to a database of more than 3,500 members. We also have a Franco-Belgian guide, which covers the way in which governments are organized on both sides of the borders, and we explain the various layers. So sometimes it's not easy for a Belgian citizen to understand how the system works in France and vice versa. So this document is available on our internet site, and this is probably the most viewed on our site. We've registered a very large number of clicks. This stems from the so-called proximity vicinity meetings we've had. So that is between the mayors and of Belgium and France. And so this stems from a request that had been formulated during those meetings of our mayors. Recently, we've also created a memo showing the maps and the relevant figures of the Eurometropole. So it's a touristic approach here, and it is addressing the partners, elected members, but also citizens. So we have the beginning of an advocacy speech in here. So we provide information so that people in their metropolis can really understand how it works. Each social network adopt a different tonality, a different goal. For instance, on Facebook, on Instagram, we will communicate directly towards the citizens, whereas on another media, we will be talking directly to elected members. So let's see communication aimed at elected representatives and partners. We want to create support, to get them involved, explain what the agency is about, what we do, and give them an appetite for what we are putting in place. What is important in this type of communication is to explain that we work with action groups, that we have proximity groups, and that for all of these meetings, there is a reference, a point person, a point elected person. And the same is true for the mayors. So this is how we come to explain flexibility when communicating with elected representatives. So what does it mean to have a point person for each action group? Well, it means that we can then get a strong support from a highly recognized person, recognized by the elected members and the partners. And this person is going to have the legitimacy needed to invite other people to support the project and get them involved in the project. In this case, the elected representative, who is the point person for the action, really acts as a lever which will allow our agency in the Eurometropole to have an easier task, so to speak. Also, as Loïc explained yesterday and Stéphane reminded us, we have a high rate of turnover. We have 14 partners, 80 people in the General Assembly, and these are people who rotate quite often. So having a point person amongst the elected members is something which enables us to have some continuity in the support that we will receive from the elected members and from the partners. Let me also say a few words about attrition and turnover. Historically speaking, the Eurometropolis was created by politicians who were heavily involved, who had really a strong desire to create this, but little by little, everybody ages and time has gone for them to retire, and so new people come in. So it was important for us to have a strategy to ensure continuity in the involvement of those elected members. So we've been using many means to achieve that goal. The first document you see here, called BABA pour les frontaliers France-Belgique. So it's the ABC, it's a sort of guide for mainly for professionals in the employment sector who explain to say Belgian citizens all the things they need to know if they want to go and work on the other side of the border. So this is the first publication we had. So we are now having this document translated and transposed for those who want, from the other side of the border, who want to work in our country. Then there is another document which is a source of list of all of the loopholes that you could find in cycle pathways. In other words, this is a support document which will show elected representatives and partners that there are some places where the link is missing. Sometimes it's just a few hundreds of meters of cycle pathways that need to be built, but we need their support for that. Then we also have a newsletter for the mayors of the Euro metropolis, which is published 2 or 3 times a year, if I'm not mistaken. Every year we invite to Parc Bleu all the partners to celebrate the World Water Day. Those are exchanges and initiatives around the concept of water. This year we had a retrospective of Parc Bleu, and we tried to have a projection of where we want to be in 5 years from now. We used to invite people to a large meeting room. Now we invite them to a village and invite them to take a walk and raise awareness to the issue of water. Another thing we have not mentioned yet is the fact that a few years ago we had applied for the GCT awards, and that was a possibility for us to show our partners and elected representatives that the work we do is also supported by European Union and its institutions. So this is another lever to show these elected representatives and try to get their support for the following project. Now, in parallel to this, and it might be tricky to understand, but remember that in our Euro metropolis, Lille-Kortrijk, Tournai, we take some time before implementing actions. So we have the General Assembly, we have the Bureau, and then we have the operational agency. And the operational agency is known as a sort of experimentation playfield by politicians, a sort of lab, if you want. So certain projects will be created bottom up and try to fill the loopholes that might exist. So we take one of these projects, we present it to politicians, and we say, we found something that we thought would be interesting. We would like you to be aware of this, and we'd like to have your support. This is to say that sometimes it's bottom-up, but sometimes it can be the other way around. The second type of communication, the second target group, are the citizens. Why? We have a large territory. We cover a large territory in the Euro metropolis with a variety of geographies. So all along the border, and the more you get away from the border, the more distance away from the border, the more abstract the concept becomes. And so for us, it is important to explain how we work. So sometimes we are inspired by ideas or by opportunities which come from the field. And from the field means also from the citizens themselves. The purpose is really to mainstream the information as far as possible. So let us give some examples. we have the guide in pink. Lancez-vous is a guide in French and in Dutch, which will enable people to get the basic vocabulary in both languages. If you want to go to the restaurant, if you have an interview, to get a job. And the forum of the Eurometropolis is something that we haven't mentioned yet. So we have the organized civil society, which was an emanation of the EGTC. So these are the 80 citizens who come from the council of the various territories that are covered by the Eurometropolis. They will look at the opportunities suggested by the civil society. And so the emotional landscape, which is the first document you see there, it's a sort of sensitive map. What is a sensitive map? We've asked citizens about their feelings as cross-border inhabitants, cross-border workers, and so their experience is then transposed on a map, which we call the emotional map. Let me give you some more examples. Here you see our culture. It has to do with culture. The concept is really simple. We do this 3 times a year. In an hour, we visit a museum or a place with someone who represents the cultural sector. It's a time of socialization. Then we have blue walks. These are walks in connection with the Blue Park. Sometimes we have projects with tourist operators or with local associations who come to us and tell us these are lovely walks that could be of interest to citizens on both sides of the border. And this draws attention. And in fact, we had some very good feedback from the citizens who took part not just in the walk, but who enjoyed meeting citizens from the other country. And we really are exposed to the different cultures of the Eurometropolis. Then we also have some communication around Europe. The purpose here is to make the European Union better known, better understood by our citizens. So we invite people who are confronted with the European institutions every day. They come and give a talk and they explain what this is about, and they draw a parallel with the cross-border workers. And, you know, it's interesting because it covers many different areas. Then we have here the blue square. The blue square is really at the heart of the Eurometropolis. It's an engine for us. We've always had this. We have given signposts which are homogeneous in the whole area, and it guides people if they want to take their bike and ride around the area. We invite people from the cultural sector. You can have a day of meeting with other citizens, special musical workshop, and we organize festivities. Then we have the bike guide. Here we have a map which illustrates all of the possible rides that you can take. the various paths. We also make the reader familiar with the different signposts that have been created. So there have been several versions, and we have already had 4 so far. During the COVID crisis, we had COVID updates. So that meant that every day we had a table showing the rules of what could be done, what was not allowed, what was different on the Belgian side, what was different from what they did in France. And people found this very useful. And then last but not least, all of the events that Catherine already mentioned, the walks, the blue walks around the water, but also European walks, to show concretely the impact of European funds in our cities. We've had 3 walks in our 3 main cities, in Courtrai, in Lille and Tournai. So really, to sum it all up, we want to make the territory of the Euro metropolis and the work of the EGTC as tangible as possible for the citizens. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I think a question that everybody has is, how many communication experts do you employ? Only one. Okay, well, he's a busy man or a woman. I think what this presentation really clearly highlighted is just the differentiated, sort of the tailored approach that you adopt to communicating, using different communication channels, but also engagement methods through activities, through réunions de proximité, to have a continuous flow of information that is not once and then we wait a long time, that it's sort of an ongoing process. So thank you very much for that. With that, I would like to pass the floor to Jean Perroni from MOT.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting La Motte. Yes, I will just say a short word about La Motte, because I think some people may not know us. So yes, I should have the... So yes, La Motte, it's first a network involving local and regional stakeholders on all French borders, both sides of the border, and of course a number of EGTCs or equivalent bodies. It's also national support and action at national level, obviously with French administrations like Agence de Cohésion des Territoires or Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also structured contacts with neighboring states, because cross-border cooperation, it's local and regional, but we also need to have the states cooperating together. And obviously, MOT is also involved at EU level with European institutions, but also with our colleagues of AEBR and CESCI. I would like to give some views starting from a study we proceeded for DG Regio, which was about an analysis of the consequences of the COVID fencing, the crisis of borders during the COVID pandemics. And I will be very, it's quite a summary, of course, but it's important, I think. The COVID crisis revealed the daily lives of persons in cross-border living areas and the damages that result from lack of coordination between member states. And for us, there are clearly 6 different dimensions, and I will elaborate a little bit on that. We have obviously an economic dimension. People living in the cross-border areas, they are, for instance, cross-border workers. So this is the economic, but you have also this functional dimension, all these public services and people as users of these public services. It has been explained very well yesterday. You have also, obviously, this institutional dimension with the attempt to have these cross-border institutions. But if you take the crisis as a crash test, this didn't work, basically. We are supposed to be national citizens and European citizens, but European citizenship had simply disappeared. If you wanted to cross the border with your national identity card, no way, it was finished. So it's why speaking always about citizens, I like it, but there is a problem with citizenship because the European citizenship is not realized. You have also this informational dimension. Suddenly there was no longer any information or even understanding of the other side of the border. And I will insist on the two last ones. Culture. Persons are inspired by ethics or visions. And again, the trust, the vision was broken by the crisis. Suddenly you had persons crossing the border that were blamed for being there because they were supposed to be dangerous, simply because they were another nationality. And the interpersonal dimension. In the cross-border living areas live persons committed in families or institutions. And when we had to reopen the borders during spring 2020, it's persons who reopened the borders. It's not institutions. Institutions were lost in this world, and the persons acted. And so I also use I refer to Xavier Conil's presentation yesterday. It's about generosity versus lack of propensity to cooperate. Lack of propensity to cooperate, I like it. It's within the study that had been made by ISIG of Gorizia for the Council of Europe about cross-border obstacles. And among the categories of obstacles, they identified the lack of propensity to cooperate. We have a real issue with that. So, now recommendations. Of course, we have many things to say about governance. First, governance at local level in cross-border regions. There is an issue or a question that I want to mention, but I have not the time to elaborate. I think we should ask us the question, should EGTCs have competencies and not only missions, which is the usual dogma? And I will not address that, but there are serious questions to ask about that. But I don't develop that. But in any cases, these local cross-border governance should work on information for workers, consumers, businesses. Lille Kortrijk-Tournai gave us a good example with the guide. There is, of course, this question of developing cross-border services. I don't insist. There is also the role of coordination that these organizations can play during crisis, and you also mentioned that. And there is obviously this question of interaction between politicians and citizens and to move towards a cross-border democracy. And for me, it's these three first dimensions: economic, functional, institutional. But there are also other dimensions, more immaterial perhaps. It's about observatories, it's about datas, because we need to create a common understanding. And this is lacking, and this is very important. There is also this dimension of sense of belonging, culture, and of course, it's quite interesting to have these people-to-people projects to rebuild trust, but it's not enough. It's also a question of education. It's a question of intercultural and linguistic training. So it's hard policies, and we need, I know it's a difficulty because states keep on their competence about education, but if we don't have a common approach of education in cross-border areas, I would even say at European level. There is a glass ceiling that we will not go further. So I mentioned that because I think it's important. And last but not least, this dimension of networks of persons, even in case of crisis, where these networks have to be reactivated. It's something that is not just a cherry on the cake. It should be within the cake, I mean, to work on networks of persons and personal commitment of mayors or préfets or national administrations in the different countries. So, informational, cultural, interpersonal dimensions. I would like also to address a little bit the issue of the multi-level governance. Of course, the priority is the local or regional cross-border governance, but we need also to have some action at the upper levels. First, give more means to act to these local stakeholders. It is also about differentiation of national legislations, perhaps some kind of mutual recognition between national regulations. It's about coordination between states to solve obstacles. There are some bilateral treaties. I will give the example of the French-Italian treaty. And there are also multilateral treaties like Benelux or Nordic Council. They are very important to solve obstacles. And obviously, it has been already mentioned, this European regulation, FCBS, facilitating cross-border solutions, should be the overall umbrella for all these bilateral or multilateral devices. And this is where the creation of a network of border contact points is very important. And of course, with the DG Regio playing the role of moderation or animation of this network. To be a little bit more specific, I give the example of a quite interesting border, which is France-Italy, which is not that present today in this room. The Traité du Quirinal created a border cooperation committee, which involves representatives of local regional authorities, but also cross-border cooperation bodies, when they exist, and also national parliamentarians and representatives of the two states. And the interest of this committee is that it can propose some cross-border cooperation projects, but also try to find solutions for implementation, including conventional, legislative, regulatory solutions when it is necessary. And this is very important to create a scene where people can express and discuss within a multi-level framework with a sort of accountability, because what is discussed in such a scene, it's under the control of the parliamentarians, for instance. So you cannot leave the local or the national organizations discuss within a closed room. It is supposed to be open and to rendre des comptes, to be accountable. Then I move to financial tools. It's clear that the cost of cross-border investments required sometimes amounts that are beyond Interreg. There is also the issue of asymmetric funding capacities, and it's where we need to think of new devices. Marie very clearly explained that, the idea of cross-border funds. I would like to mention two already existing good practice, both on the Swiss borders. The first is a federal Swiss policy funding agglomeration projects for Swiss cities, but including the two cross-border agglomerations of Basel and Geneva, which means that the Swiss Federation funds investments in Germany and in France. So this is something to think of. And the second very innovative device is this compensation financière, financial compensation of the income tax that is due and paid in Geneva, but part of it goes back to France to local and regional authorities. So this is very original, and we could refer to the excellent report written by Karl-Heinz Lamberts for the Council of Europe. I left the reference there. It's about what we call co-development. Another aspect is, of course, Interreg. We can go back to Interreg. Perhaps sometimes Interreg is not enough to fund the projects, but in any case, Interreg can be an incentive to integrated territorial approach and to governance, and it's typically these two new possibilities within this programming period, which are Objective 5 and the ISO 1. And I move towards the conclusion. If we take the governance on the French-Italian border, it's historically rather weak compared to Spain-France border, which has been already discussed in this room. So it was weak. You had some very few cross-border cooperation structures with legal personality in Haute-Vallée and in Alpes-Maritimes, Mercantour, so in the mountain, and some organizations without legal personality, Mont Blanc Conference, and also Biosphere Reserve around Montviso. But the Interreg Alcotra program has supported governance now for 15 years with the Plan Intégré Transfrontalier, PITER. So, in fact, they a little bit invented the Objective 5 approach in cross-border areas. And it's very interesting because they really support with the functional areas of the present programming period. They can support these different local cross-border entities, taking them where they are, helping the most advanced to strengthen their cooperation and trying to embark the other ones in a structured governance. And so we typically see there the toolbox that is progressing. You have, of course, the role of Interreg, but also the role of the bilateral treaty and the multi-level governance, because the narrative developed by, for instance, the ambassador, the two ambassadors in charge of cross-border cooperation in Paris and in Roma, they were telling to the local authorities, if you make an EGTC, you will be in the committee. It's a very simple message, but it seems to work. At that moment, the local cross-border governance on this border, which was a little bit late, is now progressing. So I will finish with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that wraps up the three presentations quite nicely, sort of emphasizing that ensuring continued political support relates to not only lobby and advocacy, specific lobby and advocacy activities. It relates to continuous promotion and communication, but also it requires what you mentioned, Jean, hard policies in terms of educating, making sure that people grow up appreciating cross-border or intercommunity cooperation, develop language skills along the way. That is not sort of one-by-one policies, but continuous efforts that need to be undertaken not only at the national but also at the international level. You also mentioned sort of the funding opportunities and funding mechanisms that are also obviously an incentive for political support. Strategic planning instruments such as PITER that can also help give an anchor for politicians to engage with, and the combination of carrots and sticks. Well, more a variety of carrots that are being offered. So thank you very much. I would like to open it up for questions and comments for our partners. I see a question in the back. Ricardo.
Thank you. It's very, very interesting to listen to this debate and to see the different approaches that we start seeing from many speakers that we have been speaking about cross-border cooperation in the past. We question frequently the position of the institutions, the position of the policy. Is policy doing what we believe it should be doing? Are the institutions doing what we believe they should be doing? And sometimes we forget that policy and institutions, they follow the people. It's what the people is convinced of. And this is why one of the key messages I take from today is to listen from Jean to say, with other words, Jean is much more diplomatic than I am, but actually was saying, listen guys, if you want to really change cross-border territories, please start dual education. Because it is the key message from this panel is we need to get in place those services, those joint services that bring people together on the long-term basis. Education is one of those. If we manage, if we, those that are convinced about the advantages of cross-border, if we manage to put in place those services that get people together on a daily basis, then on the long term, people will understand each other and will understand that their local natural territory is cross-border. That's the amazing beauty of education. For Marie, I would have one question. It's clear and understandable the position in the big higher policy about the existence or non-existence of macro tax compensations between Luxembourg and its neighbors. That's clear. Did I understand correctly that you're changing? It is likely that we will see a change of position of Luxembourg of compensating the non-existence of that tax compensation by supporting, financing directly cross-border public services. I quote, namely the case of transport. The public transportation in Luxembourg is now free under public service obligation contracts, which means the state is paying the public transport for everyone. But when the public transport crosses the border, there is no legal mandate to pay the part of the service across the border. Will we see a huge change there? Will you be able to overcome the challenge of the lack of competence to fund the transport across the border, beyond the border? One more remark, the Luxembourgish case is very unique because of 1,000 different things, but it's very interesting to see because it demonstrates the increased effectiveness of cross-border public services. And we can use this as an example to show to other territories, if you do things jointly, they are much more effective. And there's a guide for policymakers at local level. Thank you. Sorry, I was too long.
OK. Je vais répondre d'abord à la première question.
I will first reply to your first question on the new position of the new approach of Luxembourg on cross-border cooperation and on its support to cross-border public services. At this point in time, we cannot say just yet that there's been a change in the Luxembourg approach. This is ongoing, and this could change for the next intergovernmental conference. And this conference is usually the place where such changes are agreed. This conference was to take place at the end of June. It has been postponed to October. We still don't know whether it will take place in October, but what we expect from this next conference is a new position of the Luxembourg state to support cross-border cooperation beyond mobility. We identified cross-border services as a first issue with child nurseries because we decided that a step-by-step approach would lead in the end to a large cross-border cooperation. And this would also help us remove a number of worries on cross-border cooperation. Because until now, we had French elected representatives who met with other elected representatives in Luxembourg and said that we have such and such issues and please provide some money for us to solve that issue. Of course, Luxembourg said no. France was frustrated, and so we've implemented another method. We've tried to show that it was necessary to take action in a certain field, and this is why we've decided to act step by step. And in the end, we hope that we can talk about a true cross-border cooperation policy. And a true policy is necessary so that we can develop cross-border cooperation. Indeed, public transport is free of charge in Luxembourg. Once you cross the border, you have to pay. One concrete example. Luxembourg operates or runs 18 bus lines on the French territory. So you have buses in the morning and in the evening to transfer French people in France, and it's paid by Luxembourg. In France, users have to pay, but if they board the bus in Luxembourg, they don't have to pay anymore. So we haven't found a solution to this issue as yet. France does not intend to make public transport free of charge. And we are also waiting for the results on the Luxembourg side on this new policy of free of charge public transport. We're also waiting for the conclusions of the working group, which is working on this. But definitely, we haven't taken any decision on this. And I cannot even tell you where things are, in which direction things are moving.
Thank you. We have I see two raised hands. If you could briefly state your name and be very punctual in your question, so we can get both questions in. We will take both at the same time, and then also respond to them if there are questions at the same time in the keeping account to time as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this really interesting, amazing presentation. It's a great example of cooperation on the territory which is in high level of integrity, but we have a lot of borderlands which are really contrast in the historical, geographical and language context, where the convergence of economic and social level is really different. And I think the main point of it is create a great goal for Interreg programs to convergence in the social level, because when we research motivation and willingness of politicians, the answer was, okay, it's our service, it's our local tradition and local identity. It's a less effectiveness, but it's our, and still the cross-border cooperation is not the logical step. And And in case it's more effectiveness, but still the social level and education, how you told John, is really important. Stefan told in introduction that it's important to awareness of national level, but I think the first step is beginning on the local level, because the contrast is in the local level, not between Warsaw and Prague, but in the municipalities on the border. And the second one, the important goal for the mainstream programs and general regional development is convergence in economic level, because the cross-border public services can generate some free riders in the system. For example, healthcare, when the service on one side is a better level, better quality, accessibility than in mine. And of course, my business could be send my users across the border and not solve my problem there, but remove there. And I think it's two factors which can be the kind of fruit of this cross-border cooperation, and it's a two huge tasks to develop in the borders which are not integrated like these great examples. I love it, but it's still heart of the Europe, but it's around a lot of borderlands. Thanks a lot.
Merci. Daniel Codello de la ville de Charzette au Luxembourg et secrétaire du...
Daniel Coelho, Secretary of Proceed. I would like to come back to this issue of the transfer of income tax. This has been an issue for decades. This dates back to the Karlsruhe Agreement, and we've made progress with the EGTC. One observation on free of charge public transport. We have one region where transport is free of charge in Altisch. This bus line is also free of charge. Maybe we could set up more cross-border bus stations. But we have a parliament in a sovereign state which has taken this decision and which cannot take the same decision across the border. On income tax, there will definitely not be any change by the time the intergovernmental conference takes place. Mr. Peroni said it very clearly. We aim at co-developing. The Luxembourg government doesn't want to sign a blank check to Bercy, which may fund child nurseries in the Corrèze region. This is about cross-border cooperation. As long as the Luxembourg state is not certain that the money will be invested in the region across the border, it will not fund anything. I would like to remind you that the mayor of Metz was against this move. And the example you brought up in Geneva cannot be extrapolated to our region. But this makes me think about something very interesting. We underline the importance of the relation between Luxembourg and France. We have a lot of cross-border workers, but we only rely on a convention, not on a treaty. Mr. Peroni mentioned the Traité de Quirinal. France signed a treaty with Barcelona. I won't mention Aachen, but if we want to make headway on tax issues, we have to see things clearly. We need a treaty ratified by both parliaments. An intergovernmental conference lasts 3 to 4 hours every 2 years. Can you imagine the number of issues that have been mentioned? An agreement was signed at the Intergovernmental Conference in 2019, but no action has been taken because no follow-up is guaranteed. Yeah. Sometimes only French municipalities take part, so there is no follow-up on the across the border when something is decided in the intergovernmental conference. And I will tell you that some informal talks have begun in Luxembourg. In Metz, a minister announced an inter-ministerial committee, which has never seen the light of day. But we are in a region faced with a number of issues. With the Quirinal Treaty is far easier. And one last observation on the toolkit which DG Regio will present with the OECD. We have a lot of expectations. I think we should lobby the European Parliament and the European Commission to obtain specific status for EGTCs. We have an industrial area which is split in France and Luxembourg. And even the tax aspect of this industrial area is an issue. So we should put pressure on the European Commission and European Parliament so that we can make progress and remove these obstacles. Well, I will conclude. The obstacles have been associated to certain figures, and so we have to remove these obstacles.
Yes. One more question. If it can be a punctual question, that would be great, or a punctual statement.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ima Boudou. I'm working in the delegation of the government of Catalonia here in Brussels. Just, linking with the last comment and what some of the comments that they have made here, I just wanted to make a brief comment. Finally, I think that locals, we're investing a lot of efforts to the citizens, that they are working in these cross-border territories. Also, the European Union, is quite engaged on that. I mean, we feel a lot of support, but all of us, we find ourselves that there is a kind of sentiment of solitude. Xavier was mentioning yesterday, even, everybody recognized the big efforts and the importance of the works that are doing. That means that in French, I would say, les maillons qui manquent, ce sont les États. Quelques États sont très bien engagés.
Some member states are fully engaged, but not all of them. And if not everybody is on board, it's going to be difficult to continue, because that means that we will continue to battle without being fruitful. The idea I had is that it seems a good idea to try to want to have a special status for the workers who are working cross-border and on the various mechanisms for cross-border working. Those are elements that we need to follow through. In a political context, I don't know whether you read the Letta report. This is a dense report, but there is an introduction of 14 pages, which I suggest you read. It talks about cross-border cooperation, and it says that maybe we should try to do away with the borders. And to cut a long story short, the challenge of Europe today is to be competitive at global level. We don't have the same challenges as 30 years ago. 30 years ago, we were fighting for a single market. Now we want to have an actual market able to compete with India, with China, and with all these other larger players which are growing much more than we have. It seems to me that those are political issues which would be interesting to integrate in this political debate. Maybe we could have a commitment of those member states who are more reluctant to move forward in such a context.
Give the panelists an opportunity, if you would like to, with one concrete statement, not necessary, but either to respond or to conclude for your part. You ready?
I make two short points. Okay. First point, it's a little bit answer to the colleague on the Polish-Czech border. You're right. I mean, our point, I think, is not to give a priority to any cross-border flow. The point is to admit that it's a win-win game to consider things at 360 degrees, opportunities and action, but again, not to make everything more cross-border flows. It can be very difficult. The second point is just an information to share. If you are not aware, a great European legislation has just been adopted and will be in the Journal Officiel in the days to come, the Code Schengen. And in the Code Schengen, it's written that the states will have 6 months to design the cross-border regions that they will have to respect in the years to come. So this is quite challenging. In every border of Europe, the states will have to design the cross-border regions.
Thank you. Marie, Catherine, if you want to, one more comment? Okay, then I'll take the moderator's privilege to have one more comment. I think one of the challenges that we see here very clearly is that on the one hand, there is a need for tools, for political support that covers the wide range of cross-border initiatives. We're talking, for example, about the replacement of the ECBM, a recognition of the unique status of cross-border collaboration. So solutions that meet the needs of the wide variety, but at the same time, there's a need for very concrete solutions that are tailor-made to the specific necessities of the different collaborating countries, of the different regions. And I think there's a challenge to meet both the specific needs and the general need for support. Because if every EGTC, every cross-border collaboration initiative lobbies and advocates on its own right, then it will be hard for politicians to act. And with that, I would like to transition, before giving a warm round of applause, which I'll ask for in a second, to our workshop. In a few minutes, the objective is to work with us in 4 groups to look at the tool that we have been drafting, building on the experiences of the regions from which you've heard so much over the past 2 days. That includes specific considerations that can be taken into account, that can be conversation starters to strengthen cross-border cooperation. And the idea is to have a tool that gives an orientation, but is flexible enough to be adapted to different settings. So we would really welcome your support in giving us that feedback over the coming hour and a half, but also afterwards, to make sure this is as applicable and as relevant to a wide variety of cross-border initiatives and contexts as possible. On the worksheets or on the cards that we provided you with yesterday, on the top you see a number of a dimension that links to the group in which you will participate. So we have group 1 in that corner over there, group 2 here, group 3 here, and group 4 there. So after the break, if you could please go to the relevant groups and help us make sure this tool reflects your experiences, reflects your knowledge, and is as useful as possible. And with that, I would like to ask for a very warm round of applause for an excellent panel. Thank you so much. And if we could see each other at 11 here. Thank you.